We need to reduce landfills. I said, if you're cutting down so many trees, we are certainly going to harm the environment. And the purpose of the Global Recycling Day then, today, and also for the future is to connect the civil society into the bigger recycling chain.
Today, we're having an interview with Mr. Ranjit Baxi, the founder of Global Recycling Day and Global Recycling Foundation. Hello, Mr. Baxi. It's nice to meet you. How are you doing?
And thank you very much for inviting me. I'm honored and pleased to be part of global work that you are doing. So honored to be on your show today.
Mr. Baxi, we have many conferences here, many recycling events. Why you created one more recycling day?
Fantastic, very nice question. And let me explain it like this: that recycling is a global phenomenon. Recycling is not only a trade phenomenon. For recycling to work, the entire chain starts from the consumer, who is using and producing their waste. Then it is collected and dealt with or processed by the recyclers or recycling companies, which is then producing a raw material out of it, which we call in as the seventh resource. Yes. So for me, all the conferences certainly talk about recycling. Most conferences are basically trade meetings where people across the trade talk and discuss business, talk and discuss how legislations can be improved, talk and discuss what they can do within their industry to make recycling more environment friendly. All that is fantastic and very important. But unfortunately, until the consumer is connected to the chain, I don't see us completing the circle as I described before. So Global Recycling Day was an effort of mine, as you very rightly said, as a founding president. I launched it when I became a president of BIR in 2017. Was the first Global Recycling Day. And the purpose of the Global Recycling Day then, today, and also for the future is to connect the civil society into the bigger recycling chain. I want you and younger people to understand what role you can play in helping to connect the recycling chain. So we launched this Global Recycling Day not really for trade purposes, but primarily to connect the world together.
I heard that most of the life you were in paper industry, right?
Well, historically, I started my life exporting steel from British steel. This was my very first venture in the world of recycling. The word that is today, the buzzword today is recycling or green. In 1970s, it wasn't. So then I spoke to paper mills who were using a lot of pulp. And, to cut down quite a few trees, 15, 18, 20 trees to make 1 ton of pulp, depending on the species you are using, pine or whatever you want to use, or eucalyptus. So I said, if you're cutting down so many trees, we are certainly going to harm the environment. Because I studied biology and science when I was at school, I did realize that trees capture carbon in the daytime and release oxygen. So it's very important source of reducing pollution and clearing the air quality, basically. So I said, well, how do we do that? So then the paper mill said, we do use waste paper as well, but availability is very small and we don't get the right qualities. So then I said, okay, so then I moved from steel, including waste paper as well. So I started my first shipment of waste paper out of America in 1978, and then in 1980 I started doing from Europe quite a lot, from UK. In 1986, 87 we had green punct. The German government said that anybody who manufactures anything of packaging, he has to put a green dot on the item so that it can be recycled, and he had to pay a levy to the government, and the government sponsored from that levy the money to the recycling industry to collect more and process more. So then I started doing a lot from Germany. So I did steel less and less and more waste paper, and just continued all over the years. So today I do steel, paper, and plastic, but paper is still 2/3 of my business.
And I'm sure you have seen yards in Dubai. So what is the difference? Is there any difference between like yards in Dubai and UK?
Most of these paper sorting stations are called MRF, material recycling facilities. But the sophistication or the state of technology within a MRF will vary from one place to the other. For example, plastic. When rubbish is put on a conveyor belt and is being sorted, in the olden days they sorted by hand. Then technology came in, I'm talking over 40 years, and it improved. Like today, we've got advanced optical separators, which is computer guided eyes, which picks up LDP, different kinds of plastic, different colors of plastic from the conveyor belt. So it helps sorting. Because what is very important, for waste needs to be sorted very, very finely to the highest quality so that it can be used by the industry. Technology for making waste paper, of sorting waste paper today is advanced quite a lot. So different regions might adopt different kinds of technology which suits their demands. Yeah. Now, the kind of MRF that you will employ, the MRF being the sorting plant, material recycling facility, depends on the input of the material, your feedstock. Now in Europe, we have plants with feedstock something like 25,000 tons a month and more. So they're getting 1,000 tons a day. So they need much more sophisticated feedstock so that the material can flow through the plant efficiently, maintaining a high quality, as well as getting the right material. Investment will depend on the feedstock. Yeah. So I see in Europe, we have got big plants, big MRFs with big feedstocks. But in GCC countries at the moment, I don't see there is very organized, huge volumes of waste collection. So the plants really are set to meet the input or the feedstock of the material. So whatever I've seen in Dubai and other countries, I think I'm quite impressed because the level of technology employed and used is quite first class to meet the needs they have got. But what we need to do, not only in Dubai, but I think we need to do across most developing economies, is to increase the collection of the material. We need to reduce landfills. We need to reduce the waste that goes to landfills by ensuring it is recycled. But then, if you recycle more, we also need industries that can use the recycled material. But the problem we are facing today is the sea freight. You must have seen it in your meetings that you go around the world. So you generate a lot of seventh resource, but then you need to ship it, and container availability because of COVID also became a problem. But I think as we are getting out of COVID, moving into 22, 23, I see container availability getting better. I see the sea freights are getting a bit stabilized. I see lots and lots of big ships are coming, like 20,000 TEU ships are coming on stream. So the capacity to carry cargo increases. So I see more and more technology, I believe, will probably be employed in GCC countries as your collection improves, your segregation improves, your MRF quality improves, your output improves, and the market for your output also widens. I mean, the word of recycling is a business model, but I think the governments also need to come in and take a social responsibility to help promote this industry. Big industries need to put the CSR funding to help the chain that is collecting their waste. So I think there is a lot of investments required, better legislation is required, a bit of support from the governments is required across the world really. And, COP26 and all those have been talking of lots of things, but I haven't seen COP26 making any big pronouncement of how they will have to promote recycling, because recycling is a very important part, and in fact is a very integral part of the COP26 cycle if you are going to succeed in zero waste target by 2050, because until we are able to use the waste, source it, segregate it, and provide better refined raw material, it'll all end up in landfill. And that is exactly what you don't want to happen. So recycling is so much integrated into any part of the pollution cycle. So So I believe it's a very important industry, and everybody has to play their part.
What do you think, Mr. Baxi? Is there many recyclers they could make a profit from pandemic, scrap traders or the recycling companies?
Let me congratulate the recycling industry world over, because during the pandemic period, we are one of the industries that was classified as an essential industry which had to operate even through COVID pandemic lockdown times. Why? Because although we were stuck indoors, we were still eating, drinking, producing waste. That waste over a period of time would become a source of another disease. Because waste would bring in different kind of flies and different kind of problems. So the governments of the world chose to allow recycling as an essential industry during this pandemic time, just like doctors and nurses were operating. So the entire recycling industry deserves a big congratulation from me, from you, and from everybody else. Profit, I don't know about profitability, but what I certainly know that the cost of collecting, sorting, and delivering the material increased tremendously during this period. First, shipping lines were charging a lot. Second, there was a shortage of drivers. A lot of people were falling ill because of COVID. Haulage became a big problem. Logistics cost increases. Energy, as you know, certainly percentage-wise, profitability also increased. I'm not denying that. But the price did not increase simply because of increased profitability, but because of all the other variables that became impossible to run. And the demand increased a lot because the availability of paper or UBC, aluminum cans became less. But the factories after lockdown, when they opened up, they needed raw material. So they all were looking for the raw material. I mean, during pandemic in Europe, the collection of waste paper during March to June, July 20 dropped down by 35%. Europe alone collects around 55 to 60 million tons of waste paper per year. And you can imagine if that collection dropped down by 30%, we suddenly were not getting 15 million tons or 12 million tons of waste paper being collected. Either the factories were closed, it was not being generated, it was not being collected, multiple reasons. But the industry, when they opened up, they wanted the waste paper. So that is another reason where the prices shot up, because the pool of seventh resource decreased slightly. The demand for the raw material increased on the other side because factories came back. So prices increased as well. So there were multiple factors.
Yes, Mr. Baxi. And what about BIR conference in Spain? What do you think, it will happen or they will postpone it?
At the moment, it's just a little bit far away. It's in May. We're in January. So certainly we are all switched on to have the conference in Barcelona in May. And the signs of the new variant, the Omicron virus, is looking very much under control. So I see a very strong possibility that Barcelona will and should go ahead. So I think the industry is looking up to these conferences to come and sit together with other colleagues and see what they can do better. So I look forward to BIR in Barcelona going ahead.
I wanted to ask you about your goals for this year, for this 2022.
My personal vision and goal is, first of all, to make sure Global Recycling Day this year, I'm able to connect with a lot more countries, because normally we are still, even during COVID times, we still got 35 to 40 countries celebrating Global Recycling Day. I want this year to be more. In the first year, we had over 60 countries. I want to see more schools, more young people coming and joining Global Recycling Day and sharing the story, because it's not a one-man show. It's the global efforts. And your effort, Anna, is also part of the show, because what you are doing, I'm grateful to you and your organization, because you're promoting the story of recycling. So on my business side, I'm hoping now, as I come out of the pandemic, to get back into where I was pre-pandemic. So the future is very, very confused. So I hope we are able to enjoy life like we did in 2018. Even this interview, I think, is great. It's very nice, thanks to Zoom. But I am hoping that it was across the table. We would probably have enjoyed the interview a bit more better, because you're able to get a bit more connection, a bit more feeling from each other of recycling. You've got to be very passionate about recycling, and that has to grow within us.
I hope in our industry, in recycling industry, we'll have more people like with passion, not care only about profit or something like that, but more about the environment and about what will happen not only tomorrow, what will happen in 10 years, in 20 years, in 30 years. So really, thank you for sharing all your knowledges and all this information, Mr. Baxi.